If you follow politics, you would know that one of the most important gubernatorial races in our country this year will be Greg Abbott against Wendy Davis in Texas. They held their first debate, and I've got it for you. So here it is.
Senator Davis, board of mayors have expressed great concern over the public image of the region in light of heightened security and armed militia members. What would you do to balance border security with economic development?
Good evening, and I'm so happy to be here with everyone in the Rio Grande Valley. I would start, Carlos, by listening to the local law enforcement officials and others here who know best what is right for their community. Folks like Sheriff Guerra and Judge Garcia, who felt like we needed some boots on the ground, but they asked that we have deputies on the ground to assist with law enforcement, detention, and arrest authority. The surge that the governor supported was one that I supported as well, because if the federal government will not act to protect our borders, Texas must and will. But at the same time, we must be sensitive to the reputation of this community. Comments from my opponent calling this area third world are inappropriate. And as governor, I will work with this community through our tourism fund to help repair the tarnished image that's occurred as a consequence.
General Abbott, your response.
Carlos, thank you. And also, I want to extend my gratitude for being able to participate in this historic debate here in the Rio Grande Valley, which raises the issue that you touched upon, and that is whether it's in the Rio Grande Valley or anywhere in the entire state of Texas. Secure communities promote economic development. And we want to ensure that the community here in the Rio Grande Valley, as well as any community in the state of Texas, is going to be safe and secure. That was the purpose of ensuring that we have additional DPS officers on the ground. That was the purpose behind sending the National Guard down here. It's important to point out that it was after those law enforcement officials came here that SpaceX announced it was opening operations to an entire new world for business and space exploration right here in the Rio Grande Valley.
Thank you, sir.
General Abbott, recently a federal judge ruled that school funding system was unconstitutional. Should the Robin Hood system be defended or dismantled?
Well, listen, it's clear that one thing that needs to be done is to get beyond the school structure that we have in the past. The school structure that was litigated in this case was based in part on systems that were created in the last century. What I want to do is to reinvent education in schools in this state. My goal is to ensure that Texas has the #1 ranked high school and lower school education systems in the entire United States of America. And we do that by focusing on the fundamental building blocks of education. I want to ensure that education begins with a strong foundation all the way through third grade, ensuring that students have the ability to read and do math at grade level by the time they finish the third grade. But most importantly, I want to put trust where it belongs, and that is with our teachers, and get all these one-size-fits-all mandates from Austin, Texas off the backs of teachers.
Senator Davis.
In stark contrast to Mr. Abbott, I stood in protest against $5.4 billion in cuts to our public schools. Mr. Abbott has been defending them in court ever since, and Judge Dietz' ruling ruled in favor of our children and against Mr. Abbott. Mr. Abbott, these cuts and the cuts that you're defending that have left our classrooms overcrowded, that have left our teachers laid off, that's not liberal, that's not conservative, it's just dumb. And it's shortchanging our children and selling out their future. As governor, I will make the education of our children a priority, and I will fight to make sure that our schools have more resources, not less.
Thank you. Senator Davis, you recently released a book in which you discuss your personal plight with abortion. What do you see as fair regulations on abortion?
I have always believed that women should be able to make this most personal and difficult of decisions themselves, guided by their faith and their family and with their doctor. I stood on the Senate floor for 13 hours to assure that this most private of decisions could be made by women. My opponent, on the other hand, has paid women in his office less than he's paid men. He has campaigned with a known sexual predator who has bragged about having sex with underage girls. And he has shown that he is not favorable even for women to make decisions on their own in cases of brutal rape or incest. Mr. Abbott, that is not protecting Texas women. And on behalf of Texas women, I say no thank you.
General Abbott, your response.
Sure, Ryan. I am pro-life, and I'm Catholic. But like most Texans, I believe that all life is sacred. And as governor, I will develop a culture of life in this state so we can do even more to protect both women and children. But to directly answer your question, Texas is ensuring that we protect more life and do a better job of protecting the health care of women by providing that women still have 5 months to make a very difficult decision. But after that time, the state has an interest in protecting innocent life.
General Abbott, in a speech in Dallas, you compared corruption in the Valley to third world country practices. What was your motivation behind that comparison, and do you regret that many people were offended by that statement?
Well, Carlos, as you point out, I did make that statement in Dallas, and I made that statement about corruption across the state of Texas, not targeting the Rio Grande Valley. As Attorney General, I have fought to root out and prosecute corruption across the state of Texas. I have prosecuted more than 100 instances of public corruption. And it doesn't matter if you're in the Rio Grande Valley or in Dallas, Texas. We need to have a state that eliminates corruption. And as governor, I will continue to ensure that we root out challenges like this, which is why I have proposed ethics reform, so that we can prevent situations like legislators who are profiteering off of their offices. But also, Carlos, it really doesn't matter if you are here in the RGV or if you're in the Panhandle. You want to ensure that your public officials are abiding by the law. As your Attorney General and as your Governor, I will ensure that is done.
Senator Davis, your response.
These comments mean something. They label a community. And Mr. Abbott, though he says he's worked on corruption in other parts of the state, has never referred to other parts of this state as third world. Words matter. We embrace this area of our state as a part of our state, an incredible part of the diversity of who we are. As governor, my focus will be on investing and making sure that everyone understands what I understand about the Rio Grande Valley, that it is filled with parents who want opportunities for their children, that it is filled with hard-working people who want jobs that will pay them well. And as their next governor, it's my intention to provide that.
Thank you.
Senator Davis, do you support issuing driver's license to undocumented immigrants? Why or why not?
I believe that everyone who is on the road should have a driver's license and should be insured. Other states have found a way to make this happen, even for undocumented immigrants in their community. Far too often, as a public servant, I've been told about incidences where people have been in an accident with an uninsured driver. As Arizona does, Texas, I believe, should issue driver certificates for people who pass a driver's test and prove that they have insurance. That's the safest way that we can assure the people who are driving on our roads are driving with the right authority and with the right insurance.
General Abbott.
Sure. Dalila, there are problems with regard to the conflict that these laws would have with the Federal Real ID Act. And we saw that come into play when we did have another state that tried to create these driver's licenses in the form of California. And the U.S. Department of Justice rejected California's attempt to create these licenses, and so I think it's simply unworkable because of the conflict with federal law.
Thank you. General Abbott, a recent report ranks the RGV as worst for wait times when it comes to veterans' care. What action would you take to improve the timeliness and quality of care veterans receive?
Well, it is offensive that the men and women who have fought for our country are having to wait, and now it's been documented, sometimes losing their lives because of the inadequate care of the Veterans Administration. I got to tell you, my family looks a lot like Texas. It is filled with veterans. My brother served in the United States Navy for 20 years. My wife's family served in the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. In fact, she has an uncle who actually served in the Army during World War II. And the men and women who serve on the front line should not have to be pushed to the back of the line when it comes to their health care needs. It is offensive that during his campaign, Barack Obama came down here to the Rio Grande Valley and said that he would establish a veterans health care hospital right here. And we're still waiting for the president to make true on his promise. I will work with federal authorities to ensure that we get the health care we need for our veterans.
Thank you. Senator Davis, your response?
It is unacceptable that anyone who serves our country should find themselves here without the medical care that they have earned and that they so deserve. I will work with this community to assure that we do bring a hospital, a veterans hospital, here to serve our service members who have served us so well. Right now they are having to drive as far as San Antonio. We have a great opportunity for this with the new UT-RGV Medical School. And I'd like to see us work with the UT-RGV Medical School to see if we can create a shared campus that provides a medical hospital specifically for our veterans.
Thank you.
Senator Davis, Texas has left millions of dollars on the table that would have come to the state if we had expanded Medicaid. If elected, would you go after that money? Could you explain that answer?
Greg Abbott's plan is that we will send $100 billion of our tax money to California and New York in the next 10 years. There is a reason that Republican governors around this country have found a way that's right for their states to bring this money down. There's a reason that chambers of commerce throughout this state, including right here in the Rio Grande Valley, have begged us to do the right thing and bring this money back to Texas to work for us and to create the 300,000 estimated jobs per year that it will bring. Mr. Abbott is California's best friend in Texas because he wants to continue sending our tax dollars to them. And of course, Mr. Abbott, California already has one governor. They do not need two.
General Abbott, your response.
Sure, Carlos, I will provide more access to more health care to more Texans. I've laid out a plan that ensures that we increase funding for women, we increase funding for veterans, we increase funding for the disabled, and we increase funding for mental health needs. But I will not do what Senator Davis will do. Senator Davis wants to expand Obamacare in the state of Texas, and that is the last thing that we need because Obamacare is an abject failure. Obamacare and expanded Medicaid is bad for patients, is bad for doctors, it is bad for taxpayers. You've seen the future of Obamacare with VA care. That's how bad it is for patients. As it concerns doctors, they're fleeing both Medicaid and Obamacare because they simply cannot get paid. And you cannot have access to health care without doctors.
Thank you.
General Abbott, do you support an increase for the minimum wage in Texas? Why or why not?
You know, we don't need these Obama-style mandates telling business how to run their business. The one thing we know is government doesn't know how to run business. And proof of that is by looking at the state of Texas itself. Because I know that Senator Davis thinks that we need to have an increase in minimum wage here. But here's the lost fact, and that is about 94% of the hourly wage jobs in the state of Texas are paid at above minimum wage already. There's a reason for that, and that is because Texas model works as it concerns job creation. What we need to do is to get government off the backs of businesses and let the free market do this. If you look at the wage growth that we've seen in the state of Texas, the Federal Reserve says that the greatest increases we've seen in jobs in Texas are in the top 2 quartiles of the wage category. So we have high-paying jobs in the state of Texas because we don't let the federal government tell us how to run our businesses.
Senator Davis?
I know what it's like to work as hard as you can and yet stand at the grocery stand checkout and have to put food back because you don't have enough money to pay for it. Raising the minimum wage is not only good for Texas families, it's good for our economy. At $7.25 an hour, that's only $15,000 a year. That is not enough to support a family. It's good for Texas for us to raise the minimum wage and to provide an opportunity for families to provide for themselves as they so desperately want to do. Once again, my opponent is looking out for his insider friends, not for Texas families who would benefit if they've worked a hard day's work. They deserve a fair day's pay.
Thank you. Your time's up. This question, though, is for you. Austin is beginning to resemble Washington, D.C. more and more with a lack of decision-making. As governor, what would you do to prevent legislative gridlock here in Texas?
Ryan, I started on the Fort Worth City Council where I served for 9 years, and I did not serve with a partisan affiliation next to my name, and I didn't learn how to function with one either. I'm very proud that as a member of the Texas Senate, I have worked across the aisle to pass, to co-author, and to support legislation across the aisle. As governor, I believe we need a leader who will bring people together, who will stop the partisan division that we've seen in Austin, and it is creeping more and more into our everyday affairs. The people of Texas deserve us to put them, not partisan politics, first. And as their next governor, I can assure that I will continue to demonstrate respect for both parties, bring them together for common solutions, particularly making sure that we fund our public schools.
General Abbott, your response.
Ryan, I've been very effective at working with members of both parties to pass legislation, even though I'm working from the capacity as the Attorney General. I've worked with Senator Hinojosa in the RGV. I've worked with Senator Rodney Ellis in passing criminal justice reforms. I've worked with Senator Kirk Watson in passing reforms to open government laws. But Ryan, really, I think the most important thing is I'm going to be focused on issues that I think affect all Texas families. I'm going to be focused on ensuring that Texas remains #1 in the nation for job creation. I'm going to be focused on building the roads that we need for the next generation. I'll be focused on transforming education to become #1 in the nation. And I will ensure we have access to the water supplies we need so communities like here in the RGB are able to continue to grow.
General Abbott, there have been a number of cases nationally in which death penalty opponents have been proven innocent when they were accused. How would you ensure that an innocent person isn't put to death in Texas?
Yeah, I'm in favor of the death penalty, and we want to ensure the death penalty is going to be enforced effectively. We have several ways that we ensure that no innocent person is put to death. One is we have multiple layers of the appellate process. You go through the state system, the federal system, then back through both the state and federal system again. You'll have literally dozens of judges who are able to look at these matters before a person is actually put to death. However, Carlos, I think it is important that Texas continue to take a national leadership role in ensuring that the accuracy and certainty of death penalty, and that is why I worked with Senator Rodney Ellis this last legislative session on an advanced DNA testing process in death penalty cases to ensure that if a person is accused of a crime that would face the death penalty, we have the right person.
Senator Davis, your response.
I support the death penalty, and as governor, I will be prepared to enforce it. This week, General Abbott and I were both at an occasion, a sad but a tribute occasion, to someone who died serving a prison sentence for a crime that he didn't commit. It reminds us all of the importance of making sure before we mete out that most ultimate of punishments that we are sure we are meting it out for a guilty person. DNA evidence is important not only for victims of crime, but also for those who are accused. That's why I am proud to have helped to clear a backlog of over 18,000 rape kits in our state, making sure that victims have justice that they deserve and that no
Senator
guilty
Davis,
person is sitting in jail.
Thank you.
Senator Davis, Governor Perry called up the National Guard and increased DPS troopers. What actions would you take to better secure our border?
If the federal government will not act to secure our border, Texas must, and we will. And I did support the surge of DPS troops to our border. But I also asked the governor, and what I would do had I been governor at the time. I asked him to convene us in a special session so that we could hear from local community members what their needs were here, not only in law enforcement, where we would have been told by Sheriff Guerra and others that they need deputies with arrest and detention authority. They want the right boots on the ground. But we also should have asked those who have been serving the needs of folks who've been coming across the border, the humanitarian side of this issue, Catholic charities and other faith-based and nonprofit organizations need our help. And unless and until the federal government acts to assure that assistance, Texas must. And when I am governor, we will.
Darren Abbott.
Dalila, the federal government has failed to solve this problem, but Texans will not stand idly by. I'm the only candidate on this stage tonight who's outlined a plan to deal with border security. My plan ensures that we add 500 DPS officers to help secure the border, as well as internally in the state of Texas. I add 20 Texas Rangers. I add efforts to ensure public integrity, plus I provide the tools and resources and technologies we need to better address the problem. And I go after the gang-related problem as a result of spillover cross-border activity. And I came out with a new anti-smuggling law to allow us to crack down on those who are harming victims the most.
Thank you. General Abbott, this question is for you. This has been a summer of immigration concerns that has spurred anti-Hispanic rhetoric. Do you feel as governor there's a responsibility to diminish anti-Hispanic rhetoric?
I absolutely do. And I feel that in part because of my family. I've been married into an Hispanic family for 33 years now. My wife and I celebrated our 33rd wedding anniversary last month. And if the people of Texas elect me to be the governor, my wife will be the first Hispanic First Lady in the history of this state. And I think that is setting a new tone in our ability to connect with voters across the state. It's essential that everyone in every geographic region, everyone of every type of background, know that Greg Abbott is going to be a governor for them and for their culture. What I have found in my marriage to my wife Cecilia is that even though we come from different cultural backgrounds, we unite on common principles of faith, freedom, and the free enterprise principles that will allow anybody to start and grow a business. Those values permeate across the state of Texas and are core to the future of this state.
Senator Davis, your response.
What Greg Abbott has shown is his disrespect for this community by referring to it as third world. What we need to do is to make sure that we continue to provide opportunities for every single hardworking Texan. Everyone in our state wants their children to have opportunities and a better future than they had. And making sure that we're providing that for every child, no matter who they are, no matter where they're from, no matter how rich or poor, no matter their race, is our job. And I will consider it my most important job. Mr. Abbott has been working very hard to silence the voices of members of the Hispanic community. He leads a party that is calling
Senator
for
Davis,
the repeal of the
sorry, your
Voting
time
Rights
is up.
Act.
But the good news is, for closing statements, you could add on to that. This seems like a perfect spot for us to take a quick break for this historic Texas gubernatorial debate live here from the Rio Grande Valley. And we want to remind people watching that you get to make the decision when you hit the polls for the general election in November. So there's some important dates to keep in mind when it comes to this election. The last day to register, October 6th, and early voting starts on October 20th, of course, leading up to the big day, Election Day. That is on November 4th. Now, coming up next right here, we want to remind you that it is a big part of this debate, the candidate-to-candidate question. Let me tell you, based on what we've seen so far, the potential for the gloves to come off, well, it could be there, that's for sure. For folks watching at home, remember, use the hashtag RGVDebate, and you can be a part of what is happening here tonight. Let us know who's winning. Senator Wendy Davis, General Greg Abbott. What do you want to hear out of this debate from them? It's your time to chime in on that. Remember, hashtag RGVDebate. Dalila.
Así es, Ryan, y le queremos pedir a nuestro público que después de la pausa continúe con nosotros. Sin embargo, puede estar en nuestra conversación por medio de las redes sociales, Facebook, Twitter, utilizando el hashtag TXDebate.
A reminder, the first gubernatorial debate in Texas held in the Rio Grande Valley will continue right here. Be sure to stay right there. For all of everybody watching at home, it's hashtag RGV Debate, and we will be back right after this. Welcome back to the very first Texas gubernatorial debate live here from the Edinburgh Conference Room at Renaissance in the Rio Grande Valley. We kick it off right now with the candidate-to-candidate question. General Greg Abbott, you're first.
Senator Davis, do you regret voting for Barack Obama?
Mr. Abbott, what I am working on right now is running for governor of this incredible state and bringing policies forward that will benefit this state. I'm working to make sure that every hardworking Texan, no matter where they start, has an opportunity to go as far as they dream. 30 years ago, I couldn't have imagined that I would have the privilege, when I was a young, single, struggling mother, of sitting on this stage and having the opportunity to ask Texas for its vote to be the next governor. Texas is at a turning point, and that's what's important in this election. Will we create a 21st century future economy that works for all hardworking Texans, or just some? I believe that we need a governor who will fight for all hardworking Texans every single day because their future depends on it. And I believe we need a governor who is going to make sure that our children receive a world-class education because our future depends on it.
Senator Davis.
Senator Davis, it's your turn to ask the question.
Mr. Abbott, Judge Dietz has recently ruled against you and in favor of the school children of Texas, ruling that our schools are unconstitutionally underfunded. The only thing right now coming between our children and appropriate funding of their schools today is you. On behalf of the 5 million children of this state, will you agree tonight that you will drop your appeals and allow our schools to be appropriately funded?
Senator Davis, there's actually another thing coming between me and settling that lawsuit, and that is a law that you voted on and helped pass in 2011 that removes from the Attorney General the ability to settle lawsuits just like this. But it's important to understand that what I want to do is focus on creating, as governor, a better education system in this state. It's time that we put our partisan differences aside when it comes to building a better future for the next generation. What I'm focused on is not a school system that was constructed in part in the last century. What I'm focused on is building a better education system for the next generation. My goal as governor is to work toward elevating the Texas education system to be ranked #1 in the nation.
Mr. Abbott, attorney generals around
Senator
this
Davis.
country,
Senator Davis,
around
at the
this
end of the
country have
program,
stood up against their
Senator
legislatures
Davis.
when they believe
Senator
that
Davis,
they are
we agreed
wrong.
to the rules
And what you are
beforehand.
doing
I
is
appreciate you
shortchanging our
wanting
school
to
children
interject,
is wrong.
Senator Davis. We do appreciate it. We know it's a lively discussion. At the end, though, we have our closing statements, and I encourage you to use that time to continue the discussion. These are rules we all agreed upon together. Okay, Carlos, your question?
Senator Davis, if elected, would you push for individuals receiving state assistance like food stamps to be drug tested?
I actually supported a bill that would provide for that in the last legislative session. But I also supported making sure that we put in place mechanisms so that false drug tests do not force people off of food stamps. I also was very sensitive to the fact that children should not be punished by virtue of the fact that they may have a parent who is drug addicted, and therefore worked with the author of that bill to include a provision, if it was the case that a positive drug test was found, for that person to continue to receive their assistance if they would agree to go into a drug treatment program and to receive the help that they need.
General Abbott, you can respond.
Carlos, I do support that law. Listen, we want to do all we can in the state of Texas to help those in need. Part of what we can do to help those in need is to help them improve their lives. One way to help them improve their lives is if they are relying upon government benefits, we can try to help them deal with and overcome challenges they may have because of drug addiction or other challenges that would have shown up in the testing. And so we look for this to be a win-win situation, helping those who are depending upon government benefits to find a pathway beyond that so they can begin to be contributing to the fabric of the state of Texas.
General Abbott, San Antonio recently voted to raise taxes to create a universal pre-K program. Do you support a statewide pre-K program? If so, how would you fund it?
Well, I do support improving pre-K. I view pre-K as the starting point in our education, and what I have rolled out and the strategy I have is to have the premier pre-K-4 program in the entire country, because I know that if we can begin educating our students at the very beginning, that we will be able to have that solid foundation that students need to build on. So my education system does begin with pre-K-4. And then importantly, Dalila, it builds upon them to ensure that what students learn in pre-K-4 is going to continue in kindergarten, in first grade, second grade, all the way through. But it's essential, Dalila, that what we have in pre-K is not just throwing more money at it, but instead that we structure the most effective program so that students really do have literacy and numeracy skills they can begin to build on.
Senator Davis.
I strongly support quality full-day pre-K for every eligible child in this state. Unlike my opponent, who would pick and choose which children are able to get off to a strong start, I would provide that strong start to every 4-year-old in our state. My opponent has proposed standardized tests for 4-year-olds to demonstrate that they deserve to have pre-K support, picking and choosing those which would receive it and those which wouldn't. Under Mr. Abbott, 4-year-olds in this state can be assured they'd be subject to standardized tests. The only way they'd get around that is if they hire a lobbyist, form a PAC, and donate to the Greg Abbott campaign, because that's how he works.
Thank you. Senator Davis, Governor Rick Perry was indicted for abuse of power. Do you agree with the decision to indict? Please explain.
I cannot presuppose whether I agree with the decision to indict, because I do not know what the grand jury had before them. I do believe that these are serious charges and deserve, obviously, serious consideration. But I won't second-guess the justice system. I will trust it to do its work and will abide by whatever that decision is and respect it.
General Abbott, your response?
Brian, I was not a part of the grand jury, and so I don't have all the facts the grand jury may have had. What I can tell you is that it is bizarre that a governor would be indicted for exercising a veto of a spending measure. The veto authority is a constitutional authority, and I want to ensure that it remains robustly so that when I am governor, I'm able to exercise that veto for what I consider to be inappropriate spending. One of the key roles I will play as governor is to make sure that the state of Texas lives within the confines of a budget. Part of being able to fulfill that role is being able to exercise the constitutional veto power.
Thank you.
General Abbott, the mayor of McAllen says by the end of the year, he expects to spend $500,000 in taxpayer funds for the humanitarian relief efforts related to the influx of immigrants this summer. What would you do to ensure border cities are reimbursed?
Carlos, as we speak, my office is working on a potential lawsuit against the Obama administration where we are putting together all the expenses incurred by the state of Texas. And one proposal that I'm pondering is the possibility of being able to roll into that potential litigation the expenses that have been incurred by McAllen, by the Rio Grande Valley, because these are expenses that should not come out of the pockets of taxpayers in the state of Texas. The reason, Carlos, is because it wasn't McAllen or the Rio Grande Valley that caused this. The reason why this happened is all the president's fault. It's because when the president stood in the Rose Garden in 2012 and cast a message basically telling people that they would be able to come here without any type of enforcement. And so what we need to do is to hold the president and his administration responsible for paying this bill. As we speak, I'm in the process of working on getting that done.
Senator Davis, your response.
As I said earlier, had I been governor at that time, and when I am elected governor, if I have the privilege of serving there, I will call our local communities before the legislature and ask them what it is that they need. I sent a letter to Governor Perry asking him to convene us in a special session and to bring forward not only local law enforcement from our border communities to hear what they needed, but also to hear from our faith-based and charitable organizations to see what it was that we could do for them. It is the case that it is ultimately the federal government's responsibility to secure our border and to pay the costs as a consequence of not securing it. But as a governor, I do believe that the state should step in and
Senator
help
Davis.
communities such as this one.
Thank you.
Senator Davis, what would you do to combat the influence of drug cartels in Texas?
I believe that we must focus our efforts where they belong, on drug trafficking and human trafficking. That is why I supported the surge of DPS officers who have detention and arrest authority here. But I also believe that we need to be just as focused on the economic relationship between Mexico and Texas. We need to be investing more, not less, in the infrastructure that will help to accelerate efficiently the movement of goods between Mexico and Texas. Our economy is dependent upon our relationship with Mexico. And as governor, I will make sure that we work across the border, not only on security, but in continuing to keep that economic relationship strong and vibrant.
General Abbott.
Dalila, I'm the only candidate for governor who has a plan to go after the drug cartels. And I'll tell you in part why. I was in McAllen July a year ago, and I was visiting with a young Latina about college age. And she begged me and pleaded with me to fulfill my promise to secure the border and go after the cartels. Because as she explained, her brother was playing a pickup soccer game here in the Rio Grande Valley and had to play with the son of a cartel member. Children should not be forced to have to make those types of play day decisions. As governor, I will secure our border and go after any drug cartel that tries to harm any Texan.
General Abbott, this question is for you. Valley leaders blame drought conditions and Mexico's non-compliance with the treaty for a water shortage that has forced many of the region's growers to cut back on farming. If elected, how would you ensure Mexico repays its water debt?
Well, Ryan, I've already begun to work on this process. I met with Ambassador Eduardo Medina Mora to visit about it. And we talked about a number of economic-based issues. And let me clarify, he's the ambassador from Mexico to the United States. And we talked about the need for Mexico to fulfill its obligation to provide water to Texas that Texas deserves. And you can tell that he understood because you can see where Mexico is today. They are growing economically. And they know that part of their economic future is tied to the economic future of the state of Texas. I think Mexico wants to be a good partner. I think they want to see economic development flourish on both sides of the border. And just like we worked with the president in 2004 to ensure we got our access to the water from Mexico, I think we can do it again.
Senator Davis, your response.
Drought conditions have cost the Rio Grande Valley millions of dollars. Last year, farmers had to turn under millions of dollars worth of crops as a consequence of that. Ensuring enforcement of the 1944 water treaty with Mexico is absolutely essential. And as governor, I will create the relationship with Mexico that fosters the kind of partnership that will achieve that. But I also won't wait only on Mexico and that water treaty to solve this problem. That's why as a state senator, I supported and was proud that voters supported a $2 billion water revolving loan fund that will help communities like the Rio Grande Valley to create and grow water resources and conservation efforts to assure that drought does not have the devastating economic impact it's had.
Carlos?
Senator Davis, the Texas city of West was rocked by a terrible explosion caused by chemicals that were stored there that many residents did not know were stored there. What do you believe the state should do with regard to informing residents of cities if dangerous chemicals are in their midst?
Let's be clear. Right now, the only thing that is coming between Texas families knowing whether dangerous chemicals are being stored near their homes or near their schools or near where they work is Greg Abbott. Greg Abbott, who has shown time and again that he will favor the interests of his insider friends over those of hardworking Texans when he ruled that Texas families no longer have a right to know whether these dangerous chemicals are being stored close to them. This came almost simultaneously with him accepting a $100,000 plus donation from his buddies in the chemistry industry, Koch Industries. When I am governor, I will put hardworking Texans, not insiders, not donors, first.
General Abbott, your response.
Sure, Carlos. There is a law in Texas called the Community Right to Know Law, and people in the state of Texas have the right to gain information like whether or not chemicals are stored in their neighborhood. There's also another law competing with it, and that is the Texas Homeland Security Act. And I applied the Texas Homeland Security Act to ensure that information involving certain chemicals is not disclosed to potential terrorists. Terrorists like Timothy McVeigh, who used the very fertilizing element that blew up the plant in West to blow up a courthouse in Oklahoma City. We've seen the rise of terrorism. I've been involved in prosecuting a terrorist member of ISIS. We need to be very cautious about the information that's provided to terrorists in Texas.
General Abbott, do you think Texas is tough enough on capital punishment?
Are we tough enough on capital punishment? We have probably the toughest capital punishment laws in the nation. And our job in criminal justice is to ensure those who commit the most heinous crimes get the capital punishment they richly deserve. And they deserve it because when you think about what has happened to the victims and the way the victims have been harmed and sometimes struggle before losing their lives, we need to ensure that those who commit these worst of crimes will be punished accordingly. But, DeLuda, it is essential that we carry out the ultimate punishment in a way that is fair and just and certain.
Senator Davis.
Last session, as a state senator, I voted to expand the enforcement of capital punishment to include other crimes. I do support and will carry out, as governor, the death penalty. But we also in Texas have the highest number of exonerations of any state because we had not appropriately been using DNA evidence. As governor, I will make sure that we don't have guilty people meeting the ultimate, non-guilty people, meeting the ultimate punishment. Only those where we are sure that this is the person who has committed a heinous crime. In those instances, should the death penalty be carried out.
Senator Davis, a surge in DPS troopers, along with 1,000 National Guard troops to help protect the border, is estimated to cost nearly $20 million a month in Texas. Is it worth the cost?
It is important that we put money into areas that will grow our economy, investing in education, making sure that every 4-year-old in this state has access to quality pre-K to get off to a strong start, making sure that our high school students have access to college and that we make it affordable to them. When we spend money on something that was not requested by this local community, and we put boots on the ground that don't have detention and arrest authority, costing approximately $12 million a month, we are shortchanging our ability to do what will make a smart investment in the future of this state, an investment in our children.
General Abbott.
Carlos, this was an expenditure that, not Carlos, you're Ryan. Ryan, this was an expenditure that was necessary. It was necessary because the federal government failed to do its job. The federal government has the fundamental responsibility to secure and protect our border. It failed in its fundamental responsibility. But Texas will not stand idly by. We will step up and do what the federal government has failed to do. But this is one reason why, Ryan, that we are demanding from the federal government reimbursement for the expenditures that we had to pay out to secure the border. Remember also, Ryan, the last point, and that is secure communities promote economic development. This is a way of empowering the economy in South Texas even more. Carlos?
General Abbott, there is a trial going on currently in Corpus Christi regarding voter identification laws. Please state your position regarding voter identification and explain that.
Well, I'm in favor of voter identification laws, and as you know, my office is the one that is representing the state of Texas in this case. And I'll tell you why I favor it. And that's because voter fraud is real, it must be stopped, and voter identification is one of the tools to put a stop to it. I am the only candidate running for governor who stands for election integrity, who stands for ensuring that we root out any kind of corruption that may take place in the voting process. Carlos, I almost hesitate to bring this up, but you know that one of the challenges that's going on as we speak is the fact that the FBI is involved in an investigation about people in the Rio Grande Valley who are using cocaine to buy votes. We cannot accept or tolerate this kind of lack of integrity in the election process. The Supreme Court has ruled that voter identification is one of the tools that states have the right to use to maintain integrity in the election process. I am the only candidate willing to fight for that principle.
Senator Davis, your response.
As a senator, I fought for the principle of making sure that people with valid opportunities and identifications to vote were provided the ability to do that. Mr. Abbott heads up a party whose platform calls for the repeal of the Voting Rights Act. And let's be clear what this is about. It is about suppressing minority vote. Right now, Mr. Abbott is defending in court a voter ID law that has as its intended purpose that outcome, just as he defended in my district that I represent the ability to suppress votes by tearing communities apart from each other, tearing minority voters apart from each other, to suppress their voices at the ballot box.
Thank you so much. That concludes the question and answer portion of this historic Texas gubernatorial debate right here live from the Rio Grande Valley. Now it's time for closing statements. You'll each have 2 minutes for this portion. And Senator Davis, you'll be up first.
A dear friend of mine has a grandmother who gave her the advice: when someone shows you who they are, believe them. I've shown Texans who I am. I showed it when I stood and fought against $5.4 billion in cuts to our public schools, because that's not just bad for our children. It's bad for our future. I've shown it by fighting for every 4-year-old to have access to full-day pre-K, to get off to a strong start, and every high school student to have affordable access to college. I've shown it by fighting to make sure that people are paid fairly for a hard day's work, because an increase in the minimum wage is good, not bad for our economy. Giving 2.8 million Texans an increase in their spending power and the ability to provide for their families is terribly important. I've also shown that I will fight for equal pay for equal work, and that I will fight to close outdated tax loopholes that benefit giant corporations and send that money instead to fund our public schools. My opponent has shown that he will not support equal pay for equal work for women, that he thinks we should pick and choose which of our children should get off to a good start, and that time and again he will favor his insider friends over those of everyday Texas families. Voters will have to ask themselves this in the ballot box: who will fight for me? Who will fight for my family? I am asking for your vote tonight. And if I have the privilege of serving as your next governor, you won't need a high-paid lobbyist in the Texas Capitol to represent you, because your voice will be there, because I am you, because I have never forgotten who I am or where I come from, and I will fight for you every single day.
General Abbott.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you all for hosting this unprecedented debate opportunity here in the Rio Grande Valley. As your Attorney General, I've been fighting for your liberty, against an overreaching federal government. I've elevated the Texas child support system to be ranked #1 in the nation. And I fought to defend the Ten Commandments monument on the Texas Capitol grounds, and we won. Now, I want to fight for the future of Texas as your next governor. Now, Texas is already great, but I'm running for governor to make it even better. Texas is #1 in the nation for creating jobs, and I will keep it that way by keeping government small and taxes low. I'll build the roads and the water projects we need to keep Texas growing. I will also keep our communities safe from the Rio Grande Valley all the way to the Red River. But I will also work to build a brighter future for the next generation. The way I see it, Texas is #1 in the nation for jobs. We're also #1 in the nation for farms, for exports, for energy production, for so many different things. The time has come to set a new aspiration. Texas should be #1 in the nation for educating our children. As your governor, I will work to fulfill that aspiration. As your governor, I will keep Texas the land of opportunity, the place where hopes and dreams can still be realized, the place where more freedom and less government still matters. I'm running for governor, and I'm asking for your vote to make Texas even better. Thank you.